Patsy hiding as James. So ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sharon Whiteman, and it's my great pleasure and privilege to partner with Diana Hunter and Gary Knapp for this call each and every week. We love doing what we do, and today is a special day. So this is a particular passion of mine, you know, the vicarious world of our children. There's one there, Andrew. And that it's, you know, there's more and more emerging evidence, but it doesn't take evidence for all of us to realize our food isn't what it used to be. So today we're talking about how we can really take the power of wellness into our own hands. And that no matter what the starting point of disease or disability or unwellness or low energy or whatever the label looks like, nutrition is really important in assisting your body to have the best possible outcome possible. So I think all of us that are here today putting our hands up, each and every one of us have seen, doesn't matter what the starting point, that when you add these quality nutrients into your diet, you, as some of our founders would say, you just open your mouth and swallow. It's amazing what the body can do in its ability to recover and improve structure and function. So if you think about that, improving structure and function starts with having healthy cells, and our cells are based on what we eat. So I'll just do one more check to see if anybody else has arrived. So we're still missing, if anybody's on, that can message Taryn Holman, Jody Hoskins, or Nicole Curran. That would be great because I'm going to be busy. So, and I think, Diana, you have their emails, if you have your emails in front of you, because I CC'd you on that email. So apologies for that. So I think we'll start. Does anybody have to leave, have any time constraints this morning? No? Okay. Don't see any heads nodding or shaking. So Patsy, would you like to start?
Good morning, one and all. This is Michaela's story. Michaela was born with a small cranium, and also which meant she had a small brain. I saw this child when she was 4 years old, and a request from her grandparents wanting to know if Manatech products would make a difference for her. At the time, she was unable to sit up. As a 4-year-old child, she had the primitive grip of a newborn. She also, her eyes were constantly rolling, and she was unable to focus on anything. And she was cared for like a newborn child. So anyway, her legs were poor muscle tone. Everything about her was just not as a 4-year-old would be. I had a single unopened container of Manapol, and though I had doubts whether it would make a difference, I gave this container to the child, and within 48 hours she slept through the night, which really helped the grandparents who were carers. Within 48 hours, she was smiling. And again, the grandparents were so pleased because she looked happy. And as time went on, there were changes. You know, there was just one thing I asked them to do differently, and that was to encourage tactile. And that was to place her on her abdomen, and which hopefully would help her muscle tone somewhat around her neck. Anyway, as time progressed, this little girl unbelievably progressed. She started to hold her head up. She started to smile and focus, to the point the grandfather said, you know what, she's getting cheeky, because she was responding to what they were saying and reacting. Eventually, so far, her features even changed. It's just amazing, because the condition she had, really, there was no progress for her. Even the pediatrician even said she'd do nothing. She'd progress nowhere. And she sleeps well at night. She's now holding a ball. and all on just Manipul and hope from her grandparents. Now, the other great thing about this was the experience of learning what the power of the product, because assumptions are nothing will make a difference. But this little girl is moving ahead, her features, and she's beginning to look quite pretty. You know, with a small cranium, you know, it's as if they've got a biggish body but a small head. Well, now the shape of her head is changing, and she's really contented. And so we don't know where the journey is going to take her. But, wow, the product. You know, most of you know we've been in the business a while, and Andrew's a special story for us as well. But this has been so surprising about the power of the product. We don't know. We just don't know. You just take it, wait and see. And it's also about timing. That is it. That's
how grateful are they that you had the courage, you know, even to offer them a handout, really. You held your hand out to them and offered them an option and some hope, and they took it.
Well, you know, Sharon, I'm rather with them. I'm like the queen bee. I'm loved. And so, yeah. And it does take courage, really, you know, to believe in what we have and to offer it. Sometimes we have to give it away, but, you know, you just don't know the long-term outcomes. It's exciting.
And that's a really good point, Patsy, that it's impacted not only the child's quality of life, but the whole family gets impacted when the children are improving and having those grandparents. You wouldn't want to call it a burden, but it is a big load to be a permanent carer. You would know very well. And and to have that lightened in any way is just such a blessing.
Yes. And I look forward to sharing her story into the future, particularly with Ambrito's life.
Absolutely.
What is going to happen?
How old is she now, Patsy? It's only about 6 months, isn't it, since you met her?
Well, she's now 5 years old. And and scary part, they were going to bring her back to Melbourne to have her vaccinations and immunization. And I just closed my eyes. And they said, what's the problem? I suggested, think clearly about this before you do this to her, because you just don't know the outcome. You don't want to damage her any further, but you also want to protect her. So at the end of the day, it's their decision. But it's scary, knowing my experience. Yeah. Would you be open to sharing Andrew's story? Because Andrew's been on the products for some time and had incredible improvements, I know, and even more recently, he's improving further, you've noticed. Yes. Andrew has had, right from the beginning, we've searched ways to help Andrew, because Andrew's future was really poor, according to all the experts. And so everything we've tried, including nutrition, has been beneficial, but has never, ever reached a point where Andrew is at right now using Manatech products. Initially, when we started, he was so hyperactive, you couldn't keep him still. No matter what he had, he was always hyperactive. Attention span was poor, really poor. But we felt that he really collected a lot of information, but was unable to share or react to that information, that the input we gave him. So along came Manatech, and that's over 10 years ago, and Andrew changed.
How old was he then, Patsy?
10 years ago, he was 37.
So he's been vaccine injured since an infant.
9 months old. 9 months old. And the other interesting thing, philosophy-wise, they say as you age, you go backwards. Now, he's now 47, and guess what? He is moving ahead neurologically, where they normally, the philosophy is we all start to go backwards. Andrew's moving ahead. So he started off with the core five at that stage, at that time, and he is doing so well. Then when we went to, what are the things he's doing well? He's helping us in the kitchen. He's into chopping up onions because he wants to cook. To his mother's horror, because I have this horror of sharp knives. He is assisting in the garden. He's emptying the dishwasher. He is doing wonderfully well. And he's attempting to talk. He actually said to me the other day, "Big bum, mum." Bold.
Ah, dear. No more Abertos for you, Andrew.
No more. Instead of "love you, mom." And with the Amberto's life, we've also noticed another notch up in his thinking and responding. Andrew, he's responded with facial features, but now he's beginning to use action. And that is huge for us. If you can imagine at 47 to see these changes, it's really exciting.
And again, making your journey as carers, long-term parent carers, easier. It's lightening that load, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is, because I'm training him to look after me in my old age.
He owes you.
Yeah, he owes me. And no old people's home for me, never.
Patsy, that's fantastic. And same for everybody here. Huge kudos to the parents, because sometimes it does feel, logically it's not risky, but depending on your mindset or your previous education, it can be quite frightening to make a different choice.
Yes, it certainly can. Yeah. Attitude, I think, is also important, Sharon.
Yeah.
And belief that what we have in our hands, nobody else has. And the results, we're having people comment on Andrew, how great he is. And it's easy to take him to the movies because he sits still now. It's just the little things that we all take for granted. It's just wonderful, wonderful.
Patsy, thank you so much. Thank you for helping us this morning. And ladies and gentlemen, these nutrients are not endorsed as a replacement for medical care. As you hear these stories, this is nutrition, and we've got a bit of an echo. Something's changed. I'm sorry. We hear these stories. Remember that it's nutrition that's giving the body its ability to have optimal function and structure. So it's giving us what's missing in a modern diet. So thank you very much. Welcome to all the rest of our speakers. Thank you for being here. And just wave your hand if you have a time constraint this morning and you need to go sooner than later. You're good? Okay. Chris, I'll just unmute you. Thanks for being here. I know you got permission to share your grandson's story.
Yes, we did. So can you hear me all right?
Perfect.
Great. Okay, well, our grandson Archer, he was he's now 3.5 years old. He was born 9 weeks early as what is called a Toff's baby. That is, the esophagus is not joined to the stomach, so he's unable to take any food through his mouth. And that had caused quite a large swelling of that in his mother before he was born. But when he was born, he was just 3 pounds, 2 ounces. So very, very tiny. And apparently there's about 1 in every 3 to 3,500 children are born with this condition. A lot of these Toff's babies have multiple health challenges. Some have organs missing, some have deformed limbs, some are blind, some are deaf. So visibly, he didn't seem to have any of that. He did have a couple of holes in his heart. He had a double thumb on one hand. And later on, we noticed that his feet seemed to spread outwards, and they thought they might have to splint them, but it seems to be coming okay now. He was rushed from the Gold Coast Hospital up to the Mater Hospital, and he stayed there for the next 9 months. So 9 months of their little son was left in the ICU. And as you can imagine, nursing 24/7, tubes in and out, feeding tubes, and constantly being fed with drip and with monitors and so forth. He would pick up a lot of infections and was continually getting things like pneumonia all the time. So, of course, they kept pumping stuff into him to overcome that. I did notice that on our last caller, she mentioned something, so I'll mention the same, that at 4 months old, it appeared that he suddenly went downhill, and because they were going to move him over to the other ward and had heard that there was a virus going around, we heard later that they'd given him a couple of vaccinations. Not good, and we virtually lost him that night. And through a lot of prayer and a lot of help from people, he came to. He had gone downhill, as I say, very quickly, but the parents were given the option to turn his life support off. And we said, no way, no way. So anyway, they didn't turn his life support off, and they continued having lots of operations. In fact, up until the end of last year, he'd had over 80 operations. And of course, every operation you put out to it, and you know that all the problems that can cause. They tried to lengthen the esophagus and join it again. They found that it wouldn't lengthen enough. Finally, it grew a bit, and they were able to move his stomach up and connect the esophagus so that that was connected correctly. He couldn't feed through his mouth, and he still can't. So at 3.5 years old, he's still fed through a tube. And he would, continue to get, let's say, the pneumonia, and various things would go down, unfortunately, down to his lungs instead of where it was meant to go. However, and they tried putting stents in, and they did have stents that would kind of go in for a little while, and then they'd grow over, and they had to pull them out, and the esophagus would shrink and so forth. However, early on, we started talking about, well, maybe we should try some of our product, because, again, we'd heard what it can do to people. We didn't know what it would do. We had to be very careful. And so without informing the medical people, his father would stick some ambrotos in the feeding tube. Obviously it's powder form, had to put it in water, and just continued to feed him on that. And recently he met with the original surgeon who had carried out the operation, and that surgeon said, look, I had 3 or 4 children that year as a TOFs, and Archer's the only one who's still alive.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. Anyway, so we, as I said, we started, well, why not let's try using glyconutrients, and we rang around a few of the nurses and medical people who understand what they're about and what they could do. And so what we've been doing, what the parents have been doing, is we mix the ambrotos in with his food, with his feeding tube. We put our amazing antioxidant, AO, in with that. Some of our vitamin mineral supplement, which is basically similar to the one that goes to the children around the world, the M5M program. Every now and again, we cut open an omega-3 with vitamin D and put that with it, and also our prebiotic. And since then, we've just seen quite an amazing improvement in his health. It's astounding, actually, just to see what he's like. Now, he is very small, obviously, and he is 3.5, and he's probably the height of a 2.5-year-old, but his in other areas, he's just really shooting ahead. We did find at one stage that the I'll have to say so-called nutritionists in the medical profession are not always as good as what they think they are. He was kind of going backwards, and we found that someone decided to check his iron levels and find he was very low in iron. Of course, not being fed normal food, of course, you do go lower in that. So they gave him some, and it made an amazing difference. And just a few days ago, we found out that we looked that perhaps he was kind of going backwards a little bit as far as that's concerned. So I suggested to my son, well, you know, we have an incredible, I looked up what was in Catalyst and said, you know, this may well help. So Nathan said, okay, so he gets a whole one, puts in a small amount of water to dissolve it and put it in. Fed him, that was in mid-morning. The energy that that kid had, he stayed awake all day. He wouldn't sleep for his afternoon sleep. He stayed awake till 9 o'clock at night, jumping around everywhere, talking flat out. And he'd been up since 4 a.m.
Wow.
So we just don't know what it did. But we have found that the medical people are astounded at his progress. And we find now that he seems to have one of the things that they have problems with, these TOFS babies, that they can be deaf. And he has absolutely no problem as far as hearing is concerned. In fact, he'll pick up sounds that we don't hear. And what's that sound? Is, you know, way in the distance is a helicopter or a plane or something, or somebody down the other end of the property making noise, and he hears it. He picks it up very quickly. His speech is astounding. Now, we haven't got another 3.5-year-old around to compare him with at the moment, but he comes out with huge words, and he hears a word once, and then he carries it through. And I mean, he'll talk about Manatech, he'll talk about Emprazone, he'll talk about Ambritose, and then he'll say things, that's absolutely incredible, or you look so beautiful. And some of the phrases that he comes up with, you'd think he was a much older child, and he seems to understand things that we would think, you know, perhaps a child at school would understand, putting sentences together and that. So, I mean, he's not out of the woods yet. We don't know how long he'll. Some children with us have to be fed through tube all their life. His parents sit him at the table when they're having meals, and he gets stuff. And we found when he comes to us that we might be having crackers and dip, and he wants some. So he'll get the cracker and he'll put it in the dip, and he'll suck the dip. And then after a while, we found that the biscuit was going down. And one morning, 4 crackers disappeared.
Wow. There's a thief.
Exactly. It's not the easiest thing. We find that the yolk of an egg, he'll sit at the table, he can get that down. Cheese, he seems to, and if he grates it up, he seems to swallow that down. The other day he went to the supermarket with my wife, and he was pointing out the different things, and he saw a cucumber, and he said, "What's that?" She said, "Cucumber." And all the way around the supermarket was, "Oh, I've got a cucumber. You going to get any more cucumber?" And at tea that night, he started, you know, we cut the cucumbers for ourselves in slices, and he was starting to chew on it. He didn't eat the whole thing, but obviously food is going down. And he hasn't had an operation now since last November. So this is astounding, because, you know, otherwise about every 3 to 4 weeks they had to go and widen the esophagus and so forth. So it appears that things are correcting themselves. The little problem he had with the thumb, where it was like a double thumb, they cut one part of it, so that's all okay now. He's walking and running everywhere, doesn't seem to have a problem there, which again, a lot of children in these situations can't. So yeah, he's not out of the woods, but hey, you know, we know that what we're pumping into him is making an incredible difference. And as you said earlier, what do? You open your mouth and you swallow. And we don't know. We don't know what the answers will be. But hey, it's natural food. It's getting back the nutrients that he's not getting because he's not eating ordinary food. And as you said right at the beginning, we're not getting anyway in our diets nowadays. So we're seeing an amazing results with him. He's a little miracle kid, as we can see. We'll keep on like this and see how we go. But what I'd say to anybody listening, and look, if you've got a child with a sickness, try it. It's it's food. It's never going to hurt anybody, and that's what we're finding. And so we're very pleased with the way it's going.
Sometimes it makes a difference of life and death, and sometimes it's just about thriving as opposed to enduring or existing, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, yeah. And you don't know when what's happening around the corner, where they're going to go. But yes, I would say thriving is is a good word for it. He is thriving.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's still got challenges. That's we're hoping and praying that he'll overcome those.
Fantastic, Chris.
Yeah.
Tell your son and his wife thank you for, because it does help others for these short stories to be shared. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I will. Yeah, and I'll go and say just the other thing is anybody should know that this builds your immune system. Products do. It's they're not a drug. They build your immune system, and you and I both know that as your immune system is built up and your cells can communicate, then the body starts fixing itself and overcoming the challenge that it has.
Well, and that's another really good point, Chris, because sick kids need their immune system supported even more. So, because getting a virus or something else is far more, has potential threat to them than a kid that doesn't have any challenges.
You're right. And I suppose that's one of the areas we've been, concerned about is that when he mixes with other people, it's so easy to pick up things from others because his immune system is low. But you've got to be sensible. You can't cut them off from the world. But if you can build their immune system so that they have the ability to fight back, then that's what it's about.
No, fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, we don't endorse you to not consult with your doctor. Having said that, it's an individual choice. And I know my personal choice for my family is that I research and make my own nutritional decisions. And I seek out my medical advice for when I need a prescription or an x-ray or an intervention. And that's called integrative medicine, if you haven't heard. So it's the best of modern medicine and the best of natural medicine is the way forward. And that's actually scientifically proven. It's just that we're in a state of big change in modern medicine. And, if you can imagine there's a status quo, there's a lot of resistance to changing that status quo. So sometimes we have to look after our own nutrition. So Chris, thank you so much. And I'm going to call on Barbara. I've unmuted you. Oh no. It's not letting me unmute you. Can you unmute yourself, Barbara? It's not letting. Oh, there you go.
Yes, I've just done that.
Perfect. Thank you for being here this morning. You look like you're
You're very welcome. We've just arrived on Straddy, so.
Oh, good on you.
So I've been listening to it all on the ferry, and Phil and I have just arrived on Stradbroke Island.
Beautiful. So what story would you like to share today?
My story is of an associate who had a son with autism issues, and even though his eating was very limited, she was discussing with me as to which way we could go, and the best option we had here was with the Manor Bears. And the improvement that Orky had, and Orky now was already a 4-year-old, and lots of issues with restlessness. There was always a meltdown if he was stressed in different ways, just on daily issues of daycare, concentration, even to a point of not being able to make friends because he was just a little bit different. He started off the Manor Bears, and we started him on just 4 a day, and Amy, his mother, couldn't believe that all of a sudden there was a need to have lots more vegetables. He didn't care about meat on his plate, but he was wanting vegetables. He was not only starting to sleep well at night time. Amy asked me then, would it hurt to give him 4 in the morning and 4 at night? And I said, let's try it. And so we did. He now wouldn't share the Manor Bears with his older brother. He believed the bottle was all for him. And he used to call me, and still does call me Nana B. And he said, Nana B, I'm nearly finished. Is there some more coming? And I said, my goodness. I said, how many have you got left? And he says, I think I've only got 2 more days. And just like that, I would say to him, well, yes, aren't we lucky because it's going to come tomorrow? And he had already counted out how many he needs to take for the day, and that he only had enough for 2 more days. And that was not something that Orky was even doing at daycare. And he was put back. They wouldn't send him off to pre-prep. He was put back. And then all of a sudden testing was being done, and Orky surprises me and says, well, guess where I'm going next year? I'm going to the big school. And I said, are you? And he said, yes, and it's because I'm taking my manner bears. He said, I'm now a smart boy. And I said, well, I think you are. I said, but don't you get too smart, because I said, I always have to be smarter than you. And so now this is part of Orky's regime. He still is on manor bears. He's doing very well in grade 2 now. And he's got friends that he invites to his birthday parties. And just, you know, those meltdowns just aren't happening as often. And there's even talk now as to whether mum can afford to add other products for Orky, but this is just manor bears. How amazing is that? I can't hear you.
Yeah, I muted myself when the phone was ringing. I've got goosebumps on my goosebumps listening to that, Barbara. That's
yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, you know, this young fella, I mean, just, you know, just so much is happening with his brain right now. He's helping Phil, you know, with screwdrivers, and
you just muted for that last bit after the screwdrivers.
I'm sorry, Sharon, I didn't hear that bit.
We just lost you after you said screwdrivers.
Oh, okay. So he now wants to help Uncle Phil do lots of mechanical work with screwdrivers. He knows how to use a battery-operated drill because Uncle Phil showed him, and just so many different things that, you know, he's just amazing us just for having that condition and what Manor Bears are doing for him.
Fantastic. And I bet you that mum's very grateful to you.
She absolutely is. And Amy's been an associate for a long time. And like a lot of struggling single mums, you know, she's always working out as to how much money she can afford this month to not only look after herself, but her children.
Oh, fantastic. Barbara, thank you so much I know Saturday morning's often busy, and it's obviously is for you today as well. So thank you for making the stretch to be here.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you. Taryn. That's my Canadian accent. Is it Taryn?
It's Taryn. No, that's right. How are you?
Sorry, I'm good. Thanks. Welcome.
Well, those stories were so inspiring. Mine sort of pales in comparison. So thanks for sharing all of that, guys. I've just obviously been asked to come here today to have a chat about my personal experience. Are we on me or Barbara? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. So my daughter Harper was born, and it was clear pretty much immediately as soon as I started bottle feeding her at about 8 months that she had some intolerances. So we took her to different paediatricians and we just couldn't seem to find an answer. And then we really started researching gut flora and the importance of that. So I started giving her a stick, half a stick in the morning, a probiotic, and it helped a little bit. It started clearing it up, but I mean, it was so bad that her poor little cheeks on her first birthday were completely scalded, like, you know, almost blistered. That's how bad this skin condition was. So I started giving her half a probiotic every morning, And my mum also took care of her as well. So when my mum had her for 5 days in a row, her skin would really be perfect. And then she'd come back to us and I'd give her half of the stick and it'd creep in and get worse. And I actually asked my mum what she was doing, and she was giving her 1.5 sticks per day. So I got on to doing that, the probiotic, and it just cleared her skin right up. So I think when there's a direct correlation to something that you're using and a child's skin like that, it's very clear as to what the solution has been. And I absolutely swear by the products. I take everything for myself because I believe that nutritionally today with our foods, there's so many chemicals and they're mass produced and we're just not getting the nutrients that we need from the food that we're eating, which is why I actually use all of the supplements.
That's a really good point, Taryn. And that skin condition that's quite common in kids, it gets really uncomfortable for them as well. Like it's not just a visual thing, like it's painful and itchy and often it bleeds. So, Harper must be so much more comfortable having
Yeah, it's great. And look, obviously, some of the pediatricians that I went to see, they just the solution is let's give you a cream to fix what's happening with the skin. Whereas if your skin is a major organ and that's just expressing that something's not right on the inside. So we wanted to actually fix it, not with a Band-Aid, but properly, which is why we researched it and I looked into it and started using that particular product.
Oh, fantastic. Well, and I'm sure that, do you find also that you have, this is what I find with my kids, that it's almost like having an extra medical toolkit for wellness in the family. Like, my kids know when something's up, they go, okay, well, can I have some extra? They'll ask for more when they get the first signs of a cold or flu or sore throat or anything.
That's very funny because we do the same. Like if they've got a cough, I'll give them the Ampitose, to fix that. And because of the aloe vera in it, it actually soothes their throat. And I'll ask for that. Like there's no cough medicine in our house. It's that sort of stuff. So it's actually, and it's also being preventative rather than reactive. So I find that if you're actually giving your kids all this sort of stuff, we don't have that many colds and illnesses in our house. It's just a very rare occasion, to the point where someone said, who is your local GP? And I said, we actually don't have one because it's really rare for my kids to get sick. So I suppose when you're actually doing something consistently and you're looking after your health, that's the main thing with your kids, isn't it? That's all you can hope for, that they're healthy little beings.
Yeah. And, our family finds that, if something does go around, it's like about 20% of the severity of what they see of their peers at school. That they have the ability to overcome. Like I kind of prefer they do get exposed to germs. None of them are medically fragile, so it's dangerous. But I prefer them to build their immune system and have this extra support of these nutrients. It makes it quite powerful.
Yeah, I agree. Well, all the diseases that are out there are just incorrect cells mutating and it turns into horrible stuff. So this helps cell-to-cell communication, which helps ongoing health. I think it's super important. And it's not a wonder cure in a pill. That's not what it is at all. It's just about supporting your body. It's like putting the right petrol in your car to make it drive. That's the way that I view taking those particular products.
Fantastic. Taryn, thank you so much for being here this morning.
No, thank you for having me.
Okay. And Nicole, I'll just unmute you.
Hello.
There you go.
Can you hear
Hello.
me? Yeah. Can you hear me?
I have to speak a little bit louder.
Okay. I'm at Mum's, so can you hear me now?
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Great job, Taryn. And everybody, these stories are amazing. Testimonies are amazing. It's really interesting to hear, and I'm glad Taryn went after Chris because it was like tear jerker one. So when my daughter was born, nearly 18 years ago, about 6 weeks old, when she was 6 weeks old, one day I was dressing her and she had like this big rash on her shoulder. It was like a big welt, raised skin, and it was about the size of a 50-cent piece, but which isn't much, but on a tiny little baby, it like took up her whole shoulder. So I took her to the doctor, and he told me what it was, and he said, you're going to have to get cortisone cream. And I said, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. I'm not putting cortisone cream on my baby. Just let me look into things. And at that stage, I had been taking Manatech for, I'm not sure how long, about a year or two, or maybe a year. And back then it was only brand new. We only had 3 products, and we didn't know a lot about the glyconutrients at that stage. But there was a doctor by the name of Yaroslav who was just swore by the products. And so I rang him and I said to him, can I just ask you a question? At what age can babies go on this, or kids go on this product? And he said, look, I can't tell you that, Nicole. He said, but what I can tell you is 5 of the 8 glyconutrients are found in mother's breast milk, and the other 3 babies are born with in abundance. So as her mother, you need to just make the decision on what you want to do. And I said, thank you very much. And I hung up the phone, and straight away I knew, yep, it's all safe, it's all good. And so I just got a little bit of boiling water, mixed it up into a very thin paste, and sort of fed it into her mouth. And the next day it was gone, the rash was gone, and it has never come back. So we've been really grateful for the products. It's helped our family in many, many ways. Having said that, Tara's my cousin, and Jodie, who you're going to hear from soon, is my auntie. So it's helped our family, and it's been a real blessing to know about and to be able to help many, many, many kids along the way, adults along the way. And, you know, even trying to get it into your kids is sometimes hard. But Mike Jarman, my other son, when he was born, got it straight away, right from birth, just started getting it because I knew it was okay. And then when the Nutrivirus came out, I thought, well, this is good. I'll get more stuff into them. And so I tried to put it into different things, and I made the mistake of putting it into jelly. And they could see it, they could taste it, and so they just weren't happy. And then they were sitting there one day at the bench and laughing at me and saying, you know, we can taste it in everything you put it in, Mum, and we know when you've put it in something. And I sat there and was pretty much laughing at them because they were hoeing into some hedgehog that I'd absolutely laced with it. And I said, how's your hedgehog? Is it yum? And they're like, oh, so good, Mum. And they had no idea. So there's many, many ways you can get it into kids. And it's really, really beneficial. And we're really grateful to know about it. And, yeah,
we need to do another call with the Mums Olympics on how we sneak nutrition into our kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a fan of bribery sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can I just let you know too that Lynn, Mum's is on the phone, but she couldn't get onto the computer, but she is on a landline listening. So if there's some way you can get onto her that way.
Yeah, sadly, the phone won't upgrade to panelists on this system. So it has to be either through the app on an iPhone or on a smartphone, or via a computer. But if it's actually just a landline telephone, it won't work. But thank you.
Not a problem.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. And Jodie. There you go.
Good morning.
Morning. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Sharon. Like Taryn and Nicole, Lynn's asked me to get on and talk about my daughter, Kira. She's the youngest of our kids. I've got 3. And from the age of about 4 weeks, just a scratch just on the corner of her eye. And then over the next few weeks, it got progressively bigger to about the size of a 10-cent piece or more. And like Nicole said, in a baby, that is quite big. It's quite a proportionate amount size of their body. We were quite alarmed with this. So going to the GP as well to find out what was going on with her. So we went to see paediatricians and dermatologists as well. At that point, she was about 3 months old, and it was part of her, also into her eye.
Jodie, can I interrupt for a sec?
Having cortisol high doses.
Jodie, can I interrupt for
Yes.
a sec? I might just stop your camera because you're lagging and we're missing quite a bit of the words. So I'll just stop video and you'll still be able to hear you. Can you talk and just see if that'll work?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I can hear
Yeah,
you.
how's that going, Sharon?
Yeah, that's right. So we missed
Okay.
from about 4 months, I think.
So we went to the specialists at that point, and it was quite big in her inner eye. So they sort of said it was like an iceberg as well. So what we saw superficially, it was bigger underneath the skin. So different options were high doses of prednisolone, chemotherapy drugs through a central line, a port, and having a 3-month-old baby. That was quite scary for us. And then another option was laser as well, but it was sort of said at that point, it might do more damage than good, and also that's something with the advances in technology and whatnot, when she was older, that was something she could decide. Our main concern was how it was going to impact her vision as she was developing. So my sister-in-law had been taking the products, and we had as well for many years. So we mixed it up again, like Nicole said, in mortar, and just put it inside her mouth to try and get her to absorb it. So it was with every feed we were giving it to her, and just within I think a few weeks it stopped growing, which was our main concern. But then also over the time it reduced as well. So by the time she was at kinder, this mark on her face had mostly gone, and she's 11 now, but is just a bit of a skin imperfection, I guess you'd call it now, rather than a mark that it was, quite a substantial mark on her face. So we're really grateful for the products, because the alternatives for us it wasn't an alternative for us. We weren't going to look at those options, with them being quite young, and moving on now as well. Like as Taryn was saying, when our kids are sick and not well, we get out the products, because it is building up their immune system and letting their bodies do what they're naturally able to do. So, and just different things that we've had, and Kira's mark on her face is one substantial one. Just the improvement or the impact that the products have are amazing, and it is just feeding their bodies to be able to do what it needs to do. So that's our story.
Jody, thank you so much. Sorry I had to stop your camera, but we really wanted to hear that story. So those kind of growing type skin imperfections that happen, they can just be so troublesome sometimes. It's so amazing that you found relief from that.
Yeah, but also the looks people would give her. So there was psychological impacts that was having on our family as well. People staring and gawking and pointing, and yeah, it was quite a time. But to have something very natural to be able to give her for her body to correct itself was fantastic.
Jody, thank you so much for being here and sharing your stories. And I'd like to thank all our guest speakers today. It was very empowering for all of us. So, you're listening to this and you're new to this technology, really, it's safe, it's powerful, as you won't have any doubts from hearing today. And, across the country and across the globe, we have so many stories of children thriving with the addition of these nutrients into their diet. It's the best decision you can make for your family. If something ever happened to this company and something was going to go wrong with glyconutrients, I think there'd be a massive movement from all of us trying to buy all of it. I'd never go a day without it, and my kids don't either, from birth. From their first, they had it mixed in breast milk, because breast milk is only as good as the mother's diet. And today, in this day and age, plus, in our family, we had a bit of a genetic risk, a bacterial infection, and it wasn't just enough for us to not take every action possible to ensure the good health of our kids. So my kids are 11 and 8, and they're thriving. I think, touch wood, fingers crossed. And I work really, really hard to make sure. And actually, I'll leave you with one message. It's also really important to include them in the education. I'm starting to see better language with them around healthy choices, and that they're an active participant in maintaining their wellness. So they've seen our little quick videos, nothing too long, but something in their attention span. They've seen about what's happening to our food, and they're learning about food chemicals and where to watch and what information to trust. And somehow you have to be your own discerning consumer of food and healthcare. So ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a fantastic Saturday, or whenever you're listening to this. And once again, a huge thank you to everybody who was willing to share their personal family story this morning. So we'll see you next week with Ray Robbins, and have a great day, everyone. Thanks for being here.